coffee, big cup, and hello. Welcome back to another episode of the Gilmore Way Podcast. I'm Kate.
And I'm Laura. And this week we're going to be talking about the weddings on the show. Last year we covered all of the proposals on the show, and we also had a whole conversation about marriage. But tonight we're talking about all the nuptials we got to see across the series, from the twin wedding in the third episode, right down to the last scenes of the revival. On that note, this is also your reminder that this is a spoilers all podcast. So if you don't want to know anything about who marries whom at the very end, you might want to go get caught up on the series and then just come back and join us for the festivities.
And if you could also do those YouTube-y things before we get going, like, subscribe, comment, share, fast, free, really helps us out, and we appreciate all of it. Last but not least, fair warning, I can already hear just in our pre-recording get up to speed chats that Vinny is maybe active and playful right now. So if you hear or see a cat, sorry, not sorry.
Yeah, it is what it is. He's just, having fun with his toys right now. So
yeah. That's it. Welcome to cats. All right. So weddings on the show. There's more than I even remembered. I was watching everything recently to get ready for this episode, and I was like, oh, I forgot about that. And it sort of starts in this one but continues in this one, or oh, what about the Korean weddings? So many little things sprinkled throughout. But I actually kind of love the way that Gilmore Girls handles weddings. I really enjoy the fact that they make them so that they're reasonable events. They're very down to earth in the way they plan and depict weddings. What's your overall take on the weddings on the show? Do you agree? Do you have different feelings? Is it not enough for you?
No, I think it's just the right amount. I like the moments that we also get leading up to wedding events. I love seeing Suki in the kitchen just freaking out about her cake. All of those last minute moments where you're just either not even necessarily getting cold feet, but just nervous about it, because it is a very big ordeal. That was Suki's way in that moment in time, I think, of trying to alleviate a lot of that stressful feeling that she was having. But I love, perhaps not maybe more so, but just in conjunction with the weddings, how we see the lead up to them as well, and what goes into those moments and how people can be feeling. Especially, I mean, we already mentioned the twins as well, and that whole ordeal, but just how those two girls were just, kind of just losing it a little bit over decision making, and the mom just wanting to pull her hair out and be like, I just am so ready for this day to be over. I love the truthfulness to all of that as well.
Yeah, we get a little bit of the sort of like you said, last minute planning process, last minute details falling into place, rehearsal dinners, bachelorette parties, sometimes planned, sometimes impromptu. We'll get there. We'll cover everything sort of chronologically in a minute. Also, I suppose now would maybe be a good time to explain our outfits, just so that people aren't like, what is happening here? If you're new, I'm actually engaged, so this bride-to-be veil is a real thing. So, and then I'm wearing a shirt that says "To Friends Old and New, Borrowed in Blue," which is obviously an Honor Huntsberger reference. This is from our lovely friend Jessa's TeePublic shop.
Mm-hmm.
Links to that are also in the description box. And then you're wearing a BFOTB t-shirt, also from Jess.
She's just all right.
Yeah, we like her a little.
Go check out her shop. She creates wonderful GG themed items, but obviously best friend of the bride. So we felt this was appropriate for the topic and conversation tonight.
Exactly. I still don't really have a wedding date, so this is still it's not like this is my bachelorette party, but I was inspired by Lane's look at her bachelorette. I thought about doing the whole lays and light up necklaces and all of that. I even thought about Amazoning you a princess tiara, but it was going to be exorbitantly expensive. So for some reason, well, because I'm Canadian, I don't have American Prime, and so I wouldn't be able to get free shipping, and it'd be just as much to ship as the item itself, plus the conversion rate.
Mm.
So it's going to be like $25 for a tiara you could get at the dollar store.
That's fair. That's
So
fair.
didn't end up going that route, but I got this one for myself. Hopefully there will be future wedding events to wear it to. It's not my actual veil, but like, it's fun.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah. Anyhow, yeah, this is why I'm so excited to talk about weddings, because I'm actually in the midst of thinking about one for myself. So, yeah.
Fair enough.
Anyhow, yeah. Part of planning a wedding for myself is also thinking about weddings as a whole, as a cultural phenomenon. And so I've been reading a lot of books about marriage and thinking about it a lot and scrutinizing what I see in media and such. And I've learned a lot about the history of weddings and of marriage. And like the wedding industry as we think of it today is really only about 100 years old. It's quite well known that Queen Victoria was the ultimate trendsetter for the white wedding dress. And then if you skip ahead a little bit to the 20s, that's when we start really getting mass marketing to brides. People finally figured out that they could get you to buy things. 1940s was the De Beers Corporation sort of intimating that you need to say it with diamonds, because diamonds are forever. Suddenly have the urge to watch How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Not sure what that's about.
Oh, okay. What was her name? Madame. I can't remember her name, but yes.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, but I can't remember her name either.
It had the hots for Benjamin Barry, because I mean, how could you not? But just get some frosting, just a little bit of frosting.
Frost yourselves. In that like French accent. Yes. Yeah.
Apparently this is not a stream for that movie though, but also go watch it. Great film.
This is not a Kate Hudson or Matthew McConaughey podcast. Maybe someday when we get through Gilmore, maybe we'll have more to tackle yet. But anyhow, speaking of magazines, the first bridal magazine was launched in the 1930s. The 1950s, you have Grace Kelly. So like there's all these iterations in trends and things that are considered normal, standard, expected at and for weddings. And I think, the era of Instagram has really just exploded our idea of sort of like what's standard for a wedding, and like just expanding our ideas of what we think we want and need for a wedding to the point of absurdity. It's very much about keeping up with the Joneses now. And I'm not super here for that for myself. Like, I love a good wedding, but I'm also like, do I really need to do that?
I mean, to each their own. I have had, friends of mine who have had, those types of wedding events where they just really go all out. They make a day of it, ceremony, reception, photo shoots, things like that. And, I'm not here to be critical about that. I don't think we should be. If that's what that person wants, and that's how they want their day to pan out and what they want it to be, I think that's generally okay. If you were to like make like a month-long event of it, it's like, okay, now we're probably like, I need to question what's going on here. But, within reason, I think any person wanting to make that day what they want it to be for them and their partner is okay. Some people are going to have it be a little bit more extravagant. Some people are going to scale it back. I think, all avenues are acceptable, because again, at the end of the day, it's about the commitment that these two people are making to one another. And then they're just orchestrating their day around that commitment.
Yeah. Again, not here to yuck anybody's yum, but about 5.5-ish years ago, I had a bit of a revelation for myself. I was a bridesmaid in my college best friend's wedding, and it was a great day. There was nothing wrong with the wedding itself, but as a bridesmaid, I was sort of behind the scenes of what her apartment looked like with all their DIY decorations and stuff. And like they lived in a relatively small 1-bedroom apartment in Vancouver where real estate is very limited and expensive and all of those kinds of things. And it just absolutely took over their apartment for months. And then they had to transport it there and put it up, tear it down, haul it back, sell it off, dispose of it, whatever it was. And I just remember there's beautiful flowers. And I'm sure she spent thousands on them because most floral shop minimums for weddings are like $3,000 to $4,000, just because it's so expensive to do wedding florals. And they were all just literally thrown out. They weren't composted. They were just literally chucked in a giant garbage can. And I was like, wow, this is stupid. Why do we do this? And then the other element of it for me was, I have some anxiety. I have generalized and social anxieties. I'm undiagnosed, but I'm pretty sure I have ADHD. And just the thought of stage managing such an event when, there's so much going on, there's a lot to deal with, emotions are running high for everyone. And it's just like, this is supposed to be about me making a lifelong commitment to someone. It's not supposed to be about me being like the world's best wedding planner and party host. And, it's supposed to be, I don't know, maybe a little more about us as a couple. And something I heard consistently over time from brides and just online and whatnot was that like most people don't get to spend all that much time together with their new spouse on their wedding day. The social demands of a wedding are so high that like people have had to start putting in what do you call them, first look photography and taking 10 to 15 minutes between the ceremony and the reception just to have private time. Like the fact that you have to specifically carve that out in a day that's supposed to be about your union because everybody else is like, hey, we need you to do this and this and this. And I'm just like, no, thank you. We've tried to cram so much into one day that it means that like the ceremony is only like the first little bit that we have to get out of the way before the big party starts. And like you hardly get to enjoy the company of your new spouse. And I'm like, why do we do this to ourselves? Like, why don't we come up with something a little more unique and manageable, and maybe not put so much pressure on this to be like the one best day of our lives, as if like we don't have the rest of our lives ahead of us. Like it's one thing to spend a lot of money and have a great big party, like, but I think it's about where our priorities are on the day of and what we make time for and how we interact with people. Like it's one thing to want to celebrate with your family and to be a part of a big family or a close friend group or trying to enjoy moments like that with other people you love. But at the end of the day, it's just like one big, exhausting, expensive day where, you spend money you could use on a down payment to throw a giant party that, will ultimately leave you exhausted, if happy, but exhausted. And some people go into debt for weddings, and not only that, but they're like incredibly wasteful as like from an environmental perspective, just the amount of food and cake and whatnot that go to waste, single use items, things you buy that you'll never use again and you have to either dispose of or sell. Like it's just, I'm not opposed to having big parties. I just think we need to be more mindful of how we're engaging in these events, because like I said with the Instagram thing, I think we've really inflated our idea of what's reasonable for a wedding in an age of social media one-upping.
Yeah, all excellent points. I mean, again, I just have to echo what you said. Like, we're not here to judge or, criticize anybody for the choices they make on that day. But I think there is a balance that needs, and is healthy to be struck there. Again, if it just makes me think of like scenes from like the Hunger Games films where, Katniss and Peeta just see extravagance of the capital and how these people are just gorging themselves on food, and they're repulsed by it because people in the world that they live in are still genuinely starving. It's not a direct parallel, but like that just what comes to mind to me. Like, that's extravagant, that's unnecessary. But for someone to just want to have a small party with family and friends, a dinner at like a banquet hall or something, again, strike a nice balance there where you're not being excessively wasteful. But if that is still is like spending time with your family and friends, what is going to make that day just really satisfying and happy for you, have at it.
Yeah. And if you've got the money or your family has the money, again, it's like whatever's comfortable for you. And even the wedding I was just referring to, like, it was gorgeous. It was in, why am I blanking on the name of this place? Harrison Hot Springs, British Columbia. Beautiful location, beautiful venue. The decor was pretty minimal, like she's not a big maximalist glamour girl or whatever, but it was still just so much stuff and so much work, even to have an event of that size. And I mean, it's the size of your family and your friend groups that determine how big of a place you need and how much stuff you need. Like, it was a decent sized wedding. I think it was somewhere in the 100 to 150. I think it was closer to 150. In that ballpark. Like, it's just a lot of people, so that necessitates a lot of stuff. And, and they were conscious of their use of florals too. Like, they reused the pieces from the huppah on the head table, and bouquets went onto tables and stuff. Like, it was still again, a thoughtful use of decoration and flowers and stuff, but it was still a lot of stuff at the end of the day. And I'm just like, I could just avoid all of that. and so for me, that feels like the right choice at this stage of my life. When I was younger, I very much wanted that like big wedding. And now I'm just over here like, not so much. But yeah, I think it comes out of the idea that a wedding is not a marriage, and the preparation for them are wildly different. It reminds me, I've mentioned this before too, but Monica and Chandler on Friends. Monica was demanding that Chandler essentially spend his life savings on their wedding, leaving very little left over to buy a house and have kids and pets and, a marriage. And Monica eventually comes around to be like, no, those are the things I want, not a wedding. And so they scale back too. And like, you can still have a lovely party and have a beautiful celebration, but without like, a lot of single-use plastics that are just going to end up in a landfill. And I like being a little more holistic in my thinking about it in terms of, what's the life cycle of these things that I want to use, Are they sustainable to produce and dispose of? Because if not, like,
yeah,
we're already kind of destroying the planet. Let's not make it worse with weddings, because like, just, it's insane. Not to mention the wedding tax. Like, you walk into a venue and say, I'm having a retirement party with 150 people, or I'm having an anniversary with 150 people. Cool. You walk in and say you're having a wedding, everything is more expensive. Not because vendors are trying to swindle you, but because they know the social importance of a wedding versus a birthday party, a retirement party, an anniversary party. And the pressures and expectations have risen over the last few decades to unbelievable heights. And that's how we get bridezillas. It's like, think about the person you're becoming when you do some of this stuff, and like how you're behaving with other people. There's this one YouTube wedding planner I love to watch, and she does like, am I the asshole wedding edition things from the perspective of a wedding planner. And some of it is legitimately egregious. The way we treat each other around weddings as if being the bride gives us license to be a jackass. I'm just not here for that.
Yeah, but I also think too, if I'm not excusing it. There's obviously a huge stress factor that comes into play for any bride, but I feel like anyone who's behaving like that, it's because maybe you were already a little bit of a jerk to begin with. Like, that is not something that is just like, oh, now it's coming out because of this. It's like, if you're behaving that way, there was something underlying there to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, it usually does come down to family issues or just general senses of entitlement, but just this idea that like we're the bride and it's our day and it's the best day of our lives. It sets us up for a lot of expectations and beliefs about what we are entitled to that I just think it goes too far. It just goes too far. And yeah, I think that we need to remember like the difference between a wedding and a luxury event. And it's like, if you want to have a luxury event because you have the resources and the funds and whatnot, like, sure, the environment is not going to like it, but like, you do you. But I think a wedding should be a little more like about your love as a couple rather than you worrying too much or your parents worrying too much about what it says about your status and your wealth and like, oh, our daughter's wedding is so expensive and like look at what we can provide to her. I think it's very much become a show of status for people to throw big weddings for their kids and for us to throw big weddings for ourselves. Look at how successful we are. Look, someone has chosen us to be their one and only enduring love. And I think it misses the point sometimes. And that's what I like about Gilmore Girls, because it very much stays true to the message of like, people get married because they love each other. And it's not about paper mache mushrooms and dancing midgets, Russian winter themes. It's about two people committing their lives to each other. So I love that Gilmore kind of keeps it a little more manageable and shows what it's like when people are being reasonable about these things.
Yeah. I will still say though, just as a fun little insert nugget, like when my friend had a wedding like that and the flaming desserts came out, I was here for it.
Yeah, and I think it's one thing maybe to spend a lot on food that's really delicious or impressive, and to spend on, say, really ostentatious centerpieces, you know? Again, florals that are just going to die, that cost you thousands. Like, thinking to the vow renewal episode, skipping ahead a little, just those giant centerpieces everywhere and like floral installations that were like orchids and magnolias. I don't know. Marion names Marilyn. Marion's the actress's name. Cousin Marilyn is like, oh, I have like flowers to attend to. I can't remember what it was, but you know, even Luke recognizes like, holy moly, those are real orchids. Anybody who knows anything about orchids knows that they're insanely expensive. And so again, that was just a flexing of the Gilmore's wealth. And it's like, you can enjoy the flowers with your eyes, but not in any other way necessarily. Like, again, food is a whole experience, and there's a big cultural connection moment around food. And the other thing that I think is also a pretty good investment would be entertainment, you know, a band or a DJ, activities that are fun for people, photography and videography. Like, I get the expenses of those things, but there are just some things that people are like, ooh, we need this. And it really just is like cheap plastic on a grand scale that all has to be thrown away. That's the kind of stuff that gets me.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you say that you would be open to entertainment. So, you know, just jotting it down, it's okay to contact Hep Alien to appear at wedding.
Yes. Lane, Zach, Brian, Gil, if y'all could play my wedding, that'd be great. I think they'd be perfect wedding entertainment. If you could play Now I'm a Believer for me, that'd be just awesome. But yeah, I just think that there's a difference between marriage and weddings, and sometimes we get lost in the sauce where it's just like, oh, I want this and I want that, and it gets a little out of hand. And Gilmore doesn't lean into that trap, you know. It kind of starts off that way a little bit with the twin wedding. It gets a little like they're spoiled, their father spoiled them, and you know, all of that kind of stuff. And
I just have to say, like, I would be the person if I was at that event or just like working for Lorelai or just there in any capacity, I will call myself out on it. I 1,000% would be doing what Michelle did and putting Post-it notes on their back.
Oh, sorry, that's not Matt, that's Mark. Oh, that is so good. And I mean, avoiding Drella and the swans as well.
Yeah. I will say, like, it wasn't about Michelle, but it was about Michelle. Like, I loved him in that episode. Just, again, like you said, his interaction with Drella and the swans, and, you know, do you want to interact with her or, like, take them down to the lake? The Post-it notes on the back. Twins marrying twins. He was finding comedic relief in a moment that I think was probably just feeling really, again, preposterous to him. And I get it. Like, I would probably be not maliciously doing anything, but, like, that was just funny.
Yeah. I mean, I think Lorelai says it best. This day, the swans, the tool, my head. Like, yeah. That feels accurate. And she's just the wedding planner. She's not even the mother of the brides. She's not the brides themselves, obviously. And she feels the stress and the expectation and the need to deliver, if you will, on a flawlessly executed luxury event at a very expensive inn. Mm-hmm. You know? So there's that. But yeah. Last week I mentioned that I'd been reading Liz Gilbert's book called Committed, and there's a whole section of it that I thought would be, like, really fitting to start off with. So she had this friend who very much desired to get married, and Liz, as someone who no longer wanted to get married, she'd gone through, like, she'd been married, she got married at 25, divorced within a couple of years, very acrimonious, had no interest in ever getting married again, didn't want to be tied down like that. But she had a friend who was still single and very much desired the big wedding. And she asked her about it. And she said, what really pulled at her heart was a desire for a wedding, a public event that will unequivocally prove to everyone, especially to myself, that I am precious enough to have been selected by somebody forever. She is a well-read, thoughtful, and sane adult. I do not happen to believe that animated Disney features or afternoon soap operas have taught her to desire what she desires. I believe she arrived at these desires entirely on her own. I also believe that this woman should not be condemned or judged for wanting what she wants. My friend is a person of great heart. Her enormous capacity for love has all too often been left unmatched and unreturned by the world. As such, she struggles with some very serious, unfulfilled emotional yearnings and questions about her own value. What better confirmation of her preciousness could she summon than a ceremony in a beautiful church where she could be regarded by all in attendance as a princess, a virgin, an angel, a treasure beyond rubies? Who could fault her for wanting to know, just once, what that feels like? Thankfully, my friend is mentally stable enough that she has not run out and hastily married someone deeply inappropriate in order to bring to life her wedding fantasies.
Yeah. So, smart enough to not do the 90-day fiancé thing.
Ugh, yeah. And smart enough not to do the Lorelai and Max thing.
Even worse.
Even worse.
Even worse.
Yeah. But just, the idea of weddings as public proof of your value. Don't love that either. Mm-hmm. Don't love what that says about us as a species, that that's what we need and that's why we get married.
Yeah. And, I obviously would have no way to know statistics on it, but I'm sure there are, like, a huge chunk of people in the world who are getting married to fill that emotional void because they want to be recognized by society and their family and their friends in that way, and just be seen as someone to be desired. And all of which are horrendous and incredibly, in my opinion, wrong reasons to be married. But it happens. I'm sure it will, continue to happen in the future. Perhaps that's why the divorce rate is what it is. There are a lot of factors there that go into that. But to get married because, again, you're trying to make yourself feel better, but have validation from the people around you, you should not be getting married, period, if that's why. Like, premarital counseling.
Yeah.
There's so many.
Oh, everybody needed it and nobody did it. But speaking of Lorelai and Max, why don't we move there next?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it's the wedding that didn't happen. And so it's like, it almost feels weird to put it on this list. But the reason it is on this list for me is the bachelorette party, because that is such a big part of wedding culture these days. And I thought it was like interesting. And I mean, on the previous point, like they got engaged in June and were planning to be married by September. So like they rushed into things. They needed premarital counseling. They didn't. And then, you know, we had the wedding shower and the bachelorette party. So we got all excited for this wedding and it didn't happen. So
Thank goodness.
yeah. Yeah. But talk to me about the bachelorette party. Like, what did you think of Red Light on the wedding night and the club they went to, and Emily's story about like reminiscing about the night before or the week before her wedding to Richard? Thoughts?
I mean, again, I think had Lorelai been marrying the right person at that time, like I actually think that sounds like a fun night out. You know, it's nothing that's ostentatious. It's just taking, you know, in this mind, like obviously Rory, a couple of your best gal pals, you know, just hitting up a bar, having a couple drinks, you know, getting a little bit sloshed because why not? As long as you're not driving, you know, you do you. And just enjoying that time with your friends, you know, in the lead up to what is again a really big life event. And you want to be like, you know, it made sense. Like, and I think it, you know, is true for a lot of people. You want to be surrounded by, you know, the people in your life that are closest to you. That's what Lorelai did that night. She surrounded herself by, you know, Suki, Rory. You know, I'm sure she could have done without Emily being there. But it felt like it was a night that I would expect Lorelai Gilmore to have again in the lead up to a wedding, whether it was Max, whether it was Chris, whether it was Luke, whether it was another guy, you know, that had come into the picture that was like right for her. It just felt like that's what she wanted to do. That's the night that she was going to have. Again, we've talked about this too. What strikes me is that you're calling Christopher from your bachelorette party, which is like, where is it?
Oh, it's here.
Oh, we got it. We got it.
The red flags.
Yep.
Oh, big mistake, Laura. Big mistake.
Yeah, if you are feeling the need to call the father of your child and like you know, seemingly your ex from your bachelorette party,
to tell him about your engagement for the first time.
Yeah, I think you really need to be questioning, should I be marrying this person? And the answer is no, Lorelai Gilmore. Thank you, next.
How about
bye, Felicia, that man. And we'll try again, you know, next time.
Yeah. Let the delightful human being that is Max Medina go off and live his life with someone who's better for him. Yeah. Better fit. But yeah, you're right. I love how sort of low key this is. They just go out to and it's not even a unsa kind of club. It's just very like chill and fun and unique. And like you said, it's just like a couple of her closest friends and Emily, girls' night out, and Michelle.
Mm-hmm. But I would totally let Michelle come to my bachelorette like any day of the week. Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I'll have a bachelorette. We'll see how it goes. But like, if I did, it would probably be something like that, you know, where it's just like a good night out and it's very chill and not inappropriate. You know, I'm 34, y'all. In the words of Christopher Hayden, my discothequing days are pretty much behind me. So I'm not going to go do the whole like club thing. Like I remember for Stephanie's wedding, we went to Whistler. It was a lot of fun. Like there were some really great moments, but we did the whole like going out to a club thing. And there's this scavenger hunt of like kiss a stranger and get guys' phone numbers. And I'm like, I'm profoundly uncomfortable. And, you know, at that point I was 28. So like, but I was still 2 years older, I think, than just about everybody there. Cause like, I'm a little bit older than Stephanie, but, yeah, it's not my personality to do that kind of like outgoing game. I'm way too much of an introvert to do that. But, you know, it makes me think of this video I watched. Again, I spend way too much time on YouTube and like taking in social and political criticism, but I watch a lot of The Financial Diet, and they have an episode called The Bachelorette Industrial Complex. And, you know, Chelsea refers to it as the final boss of Instagram consumerism. Apparently, the average cost for a bachelorette party these days is $10,000. 1 in 4 attendees go into debt to participate. People have to take time off work and take PTO and spend $1 gajillion to like go to Nashville or some other ridiculous place. Like, again, I've been trolling Pinterest for my own wedding event stuff, and it's like bachelorette party on the Amalfi Coast, and I'm like, what are we doing? Yeah, I want to go to the Amalfi Coast as much as the next person, but I'm not going to drag 10 of my closest friends there and like make them wear matching outfits and accessories and like and what's the word? Okay. These things used to be one evening affairs, and now it's several days where you're held hostage to events and dress codes, from boozy brunches at 10 a.m. to shot-filled nights at the club. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to hold all my friends hostage and make them spend thousands of dollars each to do that. And so that's what I love about what Lorelai did. You know, she was very much like, we're just going to go out and have a good evening. Like, one night. That's all we need.
Yeah. Again, like, not here to cast any judgment if that is what you as a bride want to do. And I think it's important too, like, if you ask that of your bridesmaids or your maid of honor or your friends who are in your bridal party and they want to be there with you and they have the funds to do it, and like they're consensually willing to join you on this vacation, so to say, again, you do you. But I think it's also important to realize that that's not realistic for everybody. You know, when my friend Jessica got married a couple of years back, she had her bachelorette in Miami. You know, she's an extraordinary friend. It was nothing personal. I could not attend because I just did not have the money to do it. She understood, and that's what was important about it. She knew that it didn't affect how much I cared about her or loved her as a friend, but just that it was going to be beyond me. And so I think it's, again, okay to have those events organized if that's what you want, but you also need to put forth realistic expectations for your bridal party or the people that you are involving in your wedding, that is not going to be realistic for everybody necessarily. And it's still, I think, is just good to continue to involve them anyway and just make them feel like they're still wanted and important to you on a very big day.
Yeah, it's like the FOMO gets real, and there's income disparities, and like within bridal parties, like not everybody is on the same level. And so if some of them can do it and some can't, then it creates this weird power imbalance and people feel left out. And it's not fair. I mean, I could see someone like Honor having a bridal like bachelorette weekend on the Amalfi Coast because all of her bridesmaids are stinking rich. That's fine. Cool. You do you. Go wherever you want. But don't put your friends in awkward situations and cost them $1 gajillion unless you know that they can comfortably swing it and that's what they want to do, right? And don't put your bridesmaids in a position of like having to compete with each other or put each other down, exclude each other, whatever, just for like a girls' weekend to celebrate your wedding. It's an unfair position to do that to some people when you know damn well that they can't afford it.
Yeah.
Oh, and then there's the like the alcohol consumption side of thing. I mean, like, we like our drinks. I mean, hello, we like our drinks. Is there coffee in that mug, or is it?
No, actually, right now this is Diet Coke, but case in point, why
is there no vodka in it? God.
We do love our beverages.
We love our bevies. And so, like, I get it, but there's a lot of social pressure around the consumption of alcohol on those weekends too, which can also be unfair to people and put them in compromising positions. You know, wine tours, breweries, party buses, booze cruises, like all of these things are popular. And it's like, if that's your vibe and all of your friends are down for it, cool. But like, maybe don't plan that if one of your bridesmaids is a teetotaler or underage or something. Like Rory with her Shirley Temple. I mean, obviously that was a different scenario, but yeah, I just, point being, like, bachelorette parties have gotten out of hand. I also really like Lane's bachelorette party. Like, they're just gonna go see a dirty movie and drink and, and have fun with each other. And they do fun things like the tiaras and, you know, gonna go see Richard Gears Johnson. If you
Yeah.
So, like, that also sounds like a great night of gal pal fun. So
You should take your bridal party to Olive Garden for yours, because I'll still be there.
I mean, on that note, public or privately after this, I want to tell you my idea for my own, like, wedding shower party. It might involve a pool and an Italian theme. Not Olive Garden.
Twist my arm.
I know.
We'll get to it.
We don't have time to talk about it now.
Yeah.
But yeah, there might be an Italian theme, something, because Dan and I want to honeymoon in Italy, so I think it would be fitting. But neither here nor there. If y'all want more wedding content from me, let me know. Joking. Probably not going to do that. But let's move on to Suki and Jackson, maybe?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I sort of alluded to it. How do you feel about Emily trying to insert herself in Suki's wedding process and trying to entice her into things she can't afford?
Fuck off, Emily Gilmore.
Yeah.
Like, it's her MO because she's such a planner and an organizer. I mean, this is what she does for Richard all the time for, you know, his business and his colleagues and his partners, you know. And so I think Emily, in her mind, was just trying to do something that she perceived as a kind gesture, you know, something that was going to make Suki's day that much better. But again, if she doesn't have the funds to do it, and it's really not her, what she envisions for her day, back off. And Emily just could not realize it. So it was very wrong for her. Again, I'm sure in her mind, it is coming from a place of genuinely wanting to do something nice for somebody, you know, on a really big day for them. But she turned into, like, you know, we allude to like bridezillas. I don't know, like wedding planner-zilla, when it's like, you just need to, like, listen to what she is saying and what she wants and know that this is not her. And, you know, bless Suki, she's too kind-hearted, I think, in that moment to really confront Emily and just say, like, please stop. This is making me so uncomfortable. This is not what I want. You know, and I think she did it because she's too nice of a person, but also because it's like, that's your best friend's mom. So you don't want to step on any toes, seem ungracious. But it was 1,000% not Emily's place to do that. And she really overstepped her bounds.
Yeah. It's the wedding industrial complex, y'all. It's, again, getting lost in the sauce. I think Suki just sort of got swept up in the ideas of all the different things she could do and could potentially have. And it can be easy to be like, oh yeah, that's totally doable. Oh, that's totally doable too. And then you kind of step back and you're like, oh, I've just spent $30,000. How did that happen? And yeah, you got to be mindful of the budget and maybe not get too involved with other people's wedding planning. Like, unless you're contributing financially, maybe don't give so many opinions. Again, this is something I see constantly on Jamie Wolfer's channel. She's excellent if you're engaged or looking to be married. Or even if you just like wedding stuff. She tells a lot of great stories. But, like, you know, one of the things that she gets a lot of questions about is, how do I mediate expectations and advice from people? Like, you know, my parents are putting X amount of money towards the wedding and they want all this input and they want certain people invited that I don't want there, or like, it's not what we want, but people are pressuring us. How do I handle this? And it's just one of those things that becomes incredibly touchy. And Emily is not even related to Suki. She just happens to show up when Suki's talking about her wedding and just inserts herself. And it gets to be a little bit ridiculous. because Emily's idea of what's reasonable is not the same as Suki's. But I still think it's a nice thought, but it's clear that she's sort of projecting from Lorelai onto Suki, where she's like, well, I'm not going to get to plan Lorelai's wedding. And then we hear that her initial vision for Lorelai's was like Russian winter, sort of a Romanov connection. I think that Sherman Paladinos have a Romanov obsession. So that's fun.
Also weird, but okay.
Yeah, like there are certain things like references you catch multiples of, and you're just like, I wonder like what that says about them. The Romanov one is fairly self-explanatory and straightforward. But I like what Emily says. She's like, I'm probably standing in your reception hall when she's in the diner. Called it.
Yeah.
So,
but also, how did you feel about Suki's trepidation leading up to it and how nervous she got? Do you think that was a normal reaction, or was it because Emily and or, society, but mainly just Emily, was there too much expectation put on Suki for her day? Or do you think like, nope, that's normal. That's probably, it is something that I think a lot of, men and women potentially face leading up to their big day. Like there can be a lot of anxiety surrounding that, but how do you feel about, again, her behavior in the 24 hours leading up to the event?
I'd say it's pretty standard. Trying on the dress one last time, making sure everything fits. I love that she had a dream that she had like a reverse mullet dress. Where it was long in the front and short in the back. And then she comes downstairs and rethinks her cake. Part of it is that she's a perfectionist and she wants to make sure that like the cake and the food and everything is top notch because she's the one in charge of it. And that's just how she is. Like even you see it on a regular basis, like when she has to relinquish the kitchen for Thanksgiving and stuff like that. So it doesn't surprise me that like the food is stressing her out. I don't think she's so much nervous to marry Jackson as she is, again, worried about the event going off smoothly and worrying about how it's perceived, like what she's serving and how everything is decorated. Like her thing where she's like, I'm serving salmon puffs. Like, am I insane? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think it's normal to fear like the process more so than the outcome, if that makes sense. I mean, it's normal to fear the outcome if you're not sure that you're marrying the right person, but I don't think that's Suki's problem. Although her choice of songs to walk down the aisle to were a little concerning. I Can't Get Started. Hey Jude. Don't Cry Out Loud. Suki, yeah. Do you even like Jackson? Oh, so good. Yeah. The other thing I love about Suki's wedding is when Lorelai's finishing up the decorations and Chris comes downstairs and she's talking to him about like, it's a real life love story and I saw it all happen. I mean, I hired Jackson. I watched them meet. I watched them have several bizarrely intense arguments over mustard greens. I watched them fall in love. I got to see it all. It was a nice show. And it made me think about how a lot of the draw of weddings is watching someone else's love story because for some reason humans eat that shit up. We love love.
Yeah. We have several million reality shows based around it that we continue to put out there just like clockwork, which personally, like, I'll pass. But, like, yes, the fact that as consumers of television, like, we eat that shit up.
Yeah. And, like, when I express my opinions about weddings and, like, what I want to do for my own wedding, I should also clarify that, like, I watch Say Yes to the Dress like it's going out of style. There's this one UK show, Don't Tell the Bride that Dan told me about that I found on YouTube, where it's just like the groom has a week and $10,000 to plan the wedding. And the bride can't have like any say in it. He gets to pick her dress and everything. And it's wild. And I love that stuff. And you know, I love going to weddings and being a guest at weddings and all of that. Like, I'm a huge sucker for it. I thought about being a wedding planner at one point, but that doesn't mean that it's right for me at this point in my life as I'm like about to get married myself. Like, just, you know, what I want and what I value at this moment is just a little bit different for myself than other people. And again, it all comes down to your values and what you can do and what you can afford. And so that's like, again, I would much rather put the money towards the tens of that, or yeah, about $10,000 it's going to cost maybe for us to get Dan here. It's going to be just $1,000 just in fees to the government alone. And that's not including lawyers and all of that. So, you know, we have other financial priorities, and that's cool. Not everybody has to deal with that expense. And so they can put it towards a bigger party, and that's fine. So, yeah. Oh, something else I noticed about Suki's wedding, they're using the chuppah, the one that Lorelai, or that Luke built for Lorelai.
Yep.
But yeah, I love the decorations, the ribbons and the colorful flowers. I love the bridesmaids' dresses and the purple flowers just juxtaposed against the teal, and the setting by the creek behind the inn. It was so pretty. Nice small wedding, 40 people. Like that to me was one of the best weddings on the show. It's not my favorite, but it was great. I think they did a really good job with Suki's engagement and wedding to Jackson.
Yeah. It was a very beautiful moment. I concur. Maybe that leads us into our next wedding to talk about that was just not as great in my mind. Not even close. But shall we move on?
Sure. What are you thinking?
A large Korean wedding where it just feels very arranged. And it probably was.
Yeah, it was. I almost forgot about this one when I was making the list of like episodes to rewatch. But Lorelai out of water with the Korean weddings.
Yeah. How about you let people pick who they want to marry? Just a thought.
Yeah. The fact that Rory refers to the Korean weddings as a factory system, not cool. I love how Rory's like, can you imagine marrying someone you didn't know? And Lane says, are you kidding? Used clothes still skeeve me out.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, and then the story of Wan Na and Ming Cha, I think their names were. Yeah. And how like he was abusive to her, and she tried to like peel him with a carrot peeler. Like, who comes up with this stuff? Please tell me this isn't a real story out of Helen Pye's life, because that would be disturbing. But again, just, you know, the idea that you don't really have a say in who you're going to marry. And in the case of the wedding we see in this episode, the bride literally doesn't speak English. And so like she literally doesn't have a voice. She literally cannot speak up for herself to say, hey, I don't want to do this. They literally say that they had her shipped over from the old country. What?
I mean, sad, but doesn't surprise me. But that's also like, you know, at least in most marriages, like that's still just such a common verbal centerpiece where it's like, should anyone object, speak now or forever hold your peace. And I'm sure in her mind, had she been given that opportunity, she would have just been like, I am objecting to my own wedding right now. Please get me the F out of here.
Yeah. And the reality is that many marriages today are still arranged. Not to say that arranged marriages can't work and that there aren't good sides to them sometimes. But we have sort of expressed in the past how realistically as adults, our marriages maybe shouldn't be something that our parents are doing for us anymore in the year of our Lord 2024. But it is, you know, still a culturally accepted practice in numerous places across the globe. And so it's not so much the arrangement part that gets me. I think it's more the way the show portrays it and the way that they don't handle it with any cultural sensitivity whatsoever. And they do it in a way to make the Kims seem othered. Yeah. It's the way they do it. But yeah, like Lane's story of them hosting 46 weddings at that house. But that's a lot. She's like, all of my cousins are pretty much married off. This is the last one. the next one, and Rory points out that the next one will probably be hers. And we kind of know that to be true. I don't know that there's any others that we see. But the thing I was wondering that didn't occur to me until thinking about this for this episode was, if they've had 46 weddings at the Kim house, I mean, I guess they did the first wedding there, but like the wedding in this episode was a Christian wedding from what I could tell. I mean, I don't speak Korean, but just in terms of like the bits of English that the minister was putting in, seemed like a Christian Seventh-day Adventist type ceremony. And it was happening at their house. Whereas Lane, when she had her Christian ceremony, did it at the church. And I'm like, why aren't you getting married at the house? I don't know. Maybe they just had too many people. 58 seats and 62 Koreans.
Yeah. I mean, it could also just be that, from Mrs. Kim's perspective, it's like, well, this is my daughter now, so it has to be in a church. Like, we can't curtail that. Like, she needs to lock it down and be married in that setting. Whereas, for maybe like relatives, distant cousins, it's like, we're going to save money and just do it here. Like, we'll still bring in, a pastor, a priest, whomever to marry you. So it'll still be religiously sanctioned, but maybe just because it's like, well, now this is my daughter. So like, we're not cutting corners in any capacity.
Yeah. Like, it's only just occurred to me that actually it might be a seating issue because, well, then again, like, I don't know how many people they crammed into the house for that Buddhist ceremony, but when they have the Korean weddings, it's just the Koreans, whereas, and Rory is the honorary Korean. Whereas with Lane, she also had her townspeople and her high school friends and all of that. So like, there might have been people invited to that ceremony. Like, it seems like Miss Patty only went to the Christian one, but mostly because she was saving herself a seat at the church. Thankfully for Lorelai, Chris, Suki, and Jackson, she had a whole row for them, conveniently. We'll get to Lane's wedding a little bit more in a bit, but I just kind of wanted to touch on the other Korean weddings a little bit. Is there anything else about the Korean weddings that you think is pertinent here?
No, I think we can and should move on.
Fair enough. Oh, next up. Think about it chronologically for a sec. What's the next wedding? Dean and Lindsay.
I would like some beef, please.
You're totally beef. I mean, not that you resemble beef, but
I choose beef.
Is that like choosing violence? Because in that case,
maybe. Okay. But for Dean and Lindsay's wedding, I would probably be like, first off, hit me with that steak. Also, I am going to need an exorbitant amount of drinks to try and forget that this is happening right now, because it absolutely should not be.
Although more drinks might make it more likely that I'd be like, I object.
Someone needs to say it.
Yeah. Oh, it's so bad. It's so bad.
Yep.
First off, we have Lindsay and her mom standing in the town square being like, tons of tools. Everything looks like frosting. I'm sorry. Are you 4?
Close enough. Yeah. I mean, think about it. This girl was like probably getting braces 5 years ago, and now she's entering into a marital union, not knowing anything really. And I say that in the sense of like, you are unprepared for marriage, you are unprepared financially, you are unprepared emotionally. In every way, this is wrong. But Lindsay was very much just living out that, childhood girl fantasy of getting married, having that event, having like, the nice looking guy on your arm, and we're just gonna, get a home together and pop out kids and live happily ever after, because that's always how it works out, right?
Yeah. This goes back to, Elizabeth Gilbert describing the Disney animated fantasy and how her friend at least had the emotional maturity to recognize that marrying the wrong person was not the price to pay to get that. And I think Lindsay was still too young to fully appreciate what she was getting herself in for. And it just makes me wonder why her parents and why Dean's parents sanctioned this union at all, and what that says about them and their values as parents and and all of that, because, you know, knowing what I know, if I had a daughter and she was 18 and said she wanted to get married, I'd be like, I'm gonna stop you right there. And at the very least, you like, I'm gonna put you through an intensive like wedding boot camp of my own devising before I ever let you contemplate this, like before you're at least 25. So
I'd watch that reality show.
right? Maybe I should do that. Maybe I should just like go back to school and get certified as some sort of like marital counselor and start my own reality show of like the wedding preparation gauntlet.
Or even like, this would be like extreme, but I'm just even thinking like, just pull those like 17 or 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-old kids off of like Maury or Jerry Springer, who are just like, I love him and it's going to be great. And then just have you step in and like take them out to the woods and be like, marital boot camp right now. I'm going to have you regretting this so hard in 48 hours.
Yeah. I mean, I think some people need that, but yeah, I don't love that their parents let them do it. And then another thing that stands out to me about it is Rory comes home for the weekend. She's in the gazebo, almost gets brained by a tablecloth. And then she goes to Lane's and she's like, have you ever heard of a phone? Because as my friend, it's your responsibility to use it to call me and tell me that my ex-boyfriend's wedding is on Sunday, so I'm not accidentally in it. And I'm like, why are you blaming Lane, but not Lorelai? Like, I mean, also, I get it. You're like, you're in a heightened state, but still, like, don't blame Lane for this. Like,
also just grow up. I mean, have a little bit of maturity to understand that, like you said, it's not Lane's fault, but it's no one's fault here. You know, he's your ex. You're not a part of your life, his life anymore. He's not a part of yours. They're allowed to do what they're going to do, and if it makes you uncomfortable, you need to kind of just contend with that and move on. But we've talked about this. Rory is so great at introspection and acknowledging and confronting internal emotions.
Yeah. Super great. Yeah. Speaking of being good at contending with your own emotions, Dean's bachelor party.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy.
What
that's a moment.
A dumpster fire.
Yeah, although I did love the Schmidt cameo. Little Max Greenfield is always welcome in my books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But again, I think, like, I'm not trying to generalize, but that was, I think, the sort of night that you were going to get from a bunch of preteen, late teen young men. You know, pound back your Bud Lights, you guys. Let's hit the town, and then we'll go to the diner and have pancakes.
Yeah. A case of beer in the JCPenney parking lot, and then laser tag. That actually sounds fun. I'm not gonna lie. I might steal that idea, but I'm 34, so I can make that decision on my own as someone who can legally drink beer in your country.
Yeah. But also, again, going upstairs into Luke's apartment and then just having regrets over Rory.
Yeah. Expressing love to Luke while drunk.
Mm-hmm. You should totally be getting married tomorrow, dude. It's super fine.
Oh. And of course, like, Luke, I'm trying to decide whether Luke should have intervened a little more. But, like, I get why he didn't. And, like, Dean kind of brushed him off. But also, like, all he did was say, hey, don't go to that wedding, which was good. But I'm like, could we have just been like, take it or leave it. Not my place to make decisions for you, but maybe not the best idea to marry someone when you're pining after someone else. Just saying. Or, like, take it to their parents. Again, just the fact that their parents are so involved. And, like, again, they're not old enough to drink. Why are you letting them get married? We keep kids from drinking at that age because their brains still aren't done developing. So why are we letting them enter into lifelong legal unions?
Because add it to the list of reasons why America is a little bit ass backwards.
Indeed. Last week for more on that. Yeah, it was just not great. Obviously, Luke told, I think it was Rory directly, like, hey, maybe don't go to the wedding. Like, just take my word for it. Just don't go. which is good. But that brings me to the point that, like, when Dean bumped into Rory, he invited her to the wedding. And so my question for you is, like, do you go to the ex's wedding? Like, was that a good idea in the first place? Because Lorelai and Rory had the back and forth about, like, do we go? Is it too weird? Like, was he nervous? Is he just inviting us because he feels like he has to? Should we go to show him that we care? Like, what's the right thing to do here? Like, do you go to the ex's wedding?
In general, or in this specific example?
Both?
For this specific example with Rory and Dean, hell no. You stay away from that like the plague, because your emotions are still way too volatile and on the line, as are Dean's. You know, had she shown up, I could have seen like a, cold feet, runaway groom moment where he's like, actually, I just can't do this right now. Potentially leaves Lindsay at the altar and is just like, no, this is actually a mistake.
I, Dean, take you, Rory.
Yep. It is. It is. Definitely pulling a moment out of the Friends book where he just, you really muffed it up bad there.
Ugh, yeah. Anyway, but in general, additional thoughts?
Oh, that's so hard. I would still say no, but depending on maybe the nature of the relationship and how far removed in terms of time it's been, I think like it would still be okay to send like a gift, and acknowledge like, hey, you were someone that mattered to me greatly, years ago. We obviously had the relationship that we had. If you can healthily and maturely acknowledge that, you're moved on from one another, and you can genuinely be happy for that person, I think something like that would be acceptable. But yeah, I would say maybe like, I would probably still say like, don't go, but if they're trying to acknowledge you in that way because they still value you as a person, maybe just like, don't go send a gift.
I like that. I think it's a nice balance where it shows that you care. But it makes me think of How I Met Your Mother when Ted's about to marry Stella. It's like light spoilers for How I Met Your Mother incoming. When Ted goes to marry Stella and he's like, kids, never invite an ex to your wedding. He invites Robin and Stella gets all weird about it. And he's like, well, I'm going to be the bigger man and I'm going to invite her ex to the wedding because he's trying to hold their daughter hostage, like their daughter in common hostage. So like Stella's daughter is not going to be at her wedding. And so he goes to bring Tony and Lucy. And then Stella ends up running off with Tony. So it's like, oops. And then Tony goes on to write a movie about it. Actually, at least two movies about it. Again, a lot of unresolved feelings can come up at weddings. So yeah, like the circumstances are very important. If there's been enough time and there's been like true closure and you've really let go, then maybe, because again, spoilers for the end of How I Met Your Mother, but like Ted goes to Barney and Robin's wedding and Robin's his ex and she tries to run away with him because she's got second thoughts about Barney. So yeah. And Ted was the best man at that wedding because Barney was also his best friend. Super complex emotions there. But, Ted worked for many years to let Robin go and to support her relationship with Barney. So I think it's a slightly different situation. But in general, yeah, I think it's a bad idea unless it's been a very long time and there's truly nothing there. But it also makes me wonder, like Lorelai going to Chris's wedding. That'd be an interesting one. That's a wedding we never got, was Chris and Sherry.
Yeah. We'll talk about that too. Maybe a little bit towards the end, the weddings that we didn't get that we would have wanted. But should we move on to the next one chronologically that we do get?
Yeah, let's do it. This one is my favorite.
Tell us why. Let's talk about it.
All right. So the next one is the Renaissance Fair wedding for Liz and TJ. It's just, again, it's bright, it's colorful, it's happy. It's a community that comes together to honor the love of their friends. Liz and TJ's vows are so simple, but so sweet. I love how TJ's like, for all the good points about tights, they don't have pockets. So I'm going to have to go off the cuff. I just love you. That's the sweetest thing. And, hearing Liz just express her genuine love to TJ and just knowing that they go the distance, I think maybe that helps too. But because we know she's had some bad marriages before and her love life has not gone to plan. And so to see her being happy and stable, and to see Jess and Luke show up for her in this moment, despite her struggles in the past with relationships, it's just, I love it.
Yeah, I have a question for you about this wedding. Just want to get your take. Do you think that Eshkarol was served?
I am an Eshkarol. Probably not. Maybe, but probably not.
That's too bad because it is a very high quality, healthy, leafy green.
Fair enough. This wedding also gives us the return of the other troubadour singing possibly the funniest song ever known to man.
But it fits for them. Like, their wedding, like, if I were attending, it's like I expect this to be something that is so just fun, offbeat, goofy. It feels par for the course for me to have something like that go down. And again, it's just surrounded by, like, it's goofy, it's like wacky, it's just hilarious, centered around two people that are just really head over heels for one another.
Yeah.
It's heartwarming.
It really is. I also, speaking of heartwarming, love the scene of Liz and Lorelai when Lorelai's fixing her dress and they're having a nice chat about marriage. And she's like, I could be married most of my life to him. And like, you could be married most of your life. You're going to make a great wife someday and a great sister-in-law to some very lucky girl. Wink, wink. Very heavy-handed foreshadowing.
Yeah, we're not doing any of that.
There's no subtlety here. Subtlety was not invited to this wedding. And then, of course, we have the crazy Carrie of it all and the tension with Luke and just how uncomfortable she makes him. We have the stripper doing the routine to relax, don't do it. Just excellent. I have a package here for Liz Danes. And Jess like, have fun. Luke has no idea what's happening, and Jess is just like, bye.
I also just love how, like, that is the go-to song at those sorts of events, thinking also how, like, that same song was used in The Proposal when Sandra Bullock goes to the bar with in middle of nowhere, Alaska. Like, just hilarious.
Yeah.
That's apparently the song.
That's the song. That was exactly what came to my mind too, was that scene. But going back to the crazy Carrie of it all, I love when Liz and Lorelai are talking in the dance studio, and Liz is like, "Go on, Luke's waiting. Unless my friend Carrie suffocated him with her boobs."
Yeah,
just so good.
Yeah.
Oh, again, a bachelor party that didn't end so well. Leading up to that, not technically part of the wedding, but like sort of part of the wedding. And last week fights, this week tights. But yeah, I love how Luke shared the book with Jess and Lorelai saw it, and Luke defended himself and he's like, hey, what if those books help people? So it's nice that he took her down just a little notch. I enjoyed that. But yeah, I love that whole wedding. It's so colorful. The costuming was fabulous. Go back to our episode on costuming, and I think our awards show too. I think I gave best costuming to that episode. Just immaculate. The whole thing was so much fun. It was so heartfelt. Luke and Lorelai have their first dance to Reflecting Light, which is just mwah, chef's kiss. Everything about that episode, just absolutely one of my favorites on the whole. Not just weddings, but like favorite episodes.
Yeah, I agree. It's a contender for favorite. I I'm gonna have to think about this a little bit more, but it's definitely podium. It's on the podium. It's definitely taking home a medal.
Yeah. I love what Lorelai says to Luke as well as he's walking her home. Hard to figure out which part of the evening was my favorite. TJ throwing his tights at the bachelors instead of Liz's garter. You ducked well, by the way. Pure self-defense.
Yeah.
Ooh, the choking guy being Heimlicked by the court jester.
Mm-hmm.
Or the minister making out with Crazy Carrie. TJ's brother making out with Crazy Carrie. Or that last guy making out with Crazy Carrie. Who was that guy? I think that was her husband. Poor Barry.
Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like a fun wedding. Like that's what I would have wanted to be at.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Would attend every day of the week.
Yeah. What's next?
Wedding 2.0.
Yeah. It's the most important day of my life, Lorelai. It's not even the most important day of your marriage.
Talk to me. First off, I want to ask, what do you think about the concept of vow renewals in general? Not just for Emily and Richard, but just blanket. How do you feel about them? Do you think they're beneficial? Pros, cons, general thoughts?
General thoughts. Once again, it is an event. It's a luxury event. It's a quote unquote unnecessary event, if you will. But that being said, I do love the concept of it. Going again to How I Met Your Mother, and again, minor spoilers for the third to last episode, if you will. Marshall and Lily are trying to help Barney nail down his vows. And Barney's like, what are you guys talking about? Like, you guys have broken every vow you made to each other. Like, I was there at your wedding. I heard what you said, and you haven't stuck to any of them. And so then we have a beautiful scene later where they sneak a moment in the church before the ceremony starts. And Marshall's like, I was thinking I should make some more vows to you because one set of vows isn't enough to cover a life of growing with you and changing with you and raising children with you. And I think it's such a beautiful concept to reevaluate your relationship at various stages and reevaluate the promises that are the glue of your daily interaction, because it's not just to have and to hold in sickness and in health. All that kind of stuff is boilerplate, but I think that there can be more meaningful personal promises that you can make to each other. And I think it is good to reconsider how relevant they are as you go through different phases of life, because there's so much change. And I think it's a great way to reinvigorate the relationship and to feel more connected to each other than ever. And, personally, I love some of Marshall and Lily's second vows, if you will. He's like, I promise not to scream at you when you're dumping out. You're the love of my life, and you deserve to drop a deuce in peace.
I mean, is that not goals?
That is high romance right there. Like that is peak romantic Marshall. So yeah, I really do like the concept. I think it's a totally legitimate thing to do. And I think in Emily and Richard's case, given that they had been separated for like 8 or 9 months, it feels fitting for them to recommit and to reinvigorate their marriage with another ritual, another ceremony, to mark this new phase in their marriage after a period of struggle.
Yeah, I agree. I'm also in the camp of like, I'm behind it. Whether or not like a marriage or a partnership has been struggling or not, I think sometimes it is needed, or not needed, but I think it's executed because in Emily and Richard's case, they had been struggling for a while. So now that they're resolving things and trying to make this work, it's just, let's kind of reestablish this foundation. And I think that's what it is for a lot of people that are in that scenario. But even when marriages are going well and there's nothing wrong, I think it's just nice, again, within reason, let's not get too extravagant here, to just reaffirm to one another, like, yeah, you're my person. I love you and respect you and care about you. And I just want us to reestablish that to one another, I don't see anything really wrong with it.
Yeah, I like it. But in terms of the other stuff, obviously theirs in particular, like their vow renewal is like orders of magnitude more expensive than my regular wedding will be. Very elaborate. Don't love how when they get there, Luke is like, "Are those real orchids?" And Lorelai's like, "Little gayer, please." I'm like, oh, come on. Like, since when is being able to recognize flowers gay? Just stop with that kind of stuff, Amy. Yeah. And then, of course, we have the bachelorette party where Emily shows up under the guise of, "Oh, I need you to fix my dress." And then Lorelai has to invite all of her female friends over at the last moment for like an impromptu party. And she ends up giving Emily penis-shaped pasta. And
gosh, I was like, oh, is she gonna bring that up?
Of course she's gonna bring that up. It's so funny. And then I love how the next morning when they're getting ready to leave, Luke's like, "Aren't you gonna lock up?" And Lorelai's like, "Babette, lock up when you leave." And she just like pops up from the couch. Oh, it was so good. Like drunk Babette passed out on the couch. Couldn't even make it to her own house next door. I love that. Oh, so much to love about that episode. Obviously we have the Christopher of it all, the Rory and Logan of it all. We'll probably have to talk about those at separate times. Yeah, Luke tries to get out of it. He tries to get out of going with Lorelai because it's like all her parents, friends, and he's not going to know anyone. And I don't blame him for that.
Yeah. Good times. Good times. Shall we move on to our next one, though, unless you have anything else to say about that?
I think that's mostly important. The only other thing is I noticed a timeline consistency because when Lorelai's getting married in season 2, Emily says that she's been with Richard for 34 years, but just 3 years later for their vow renewal, it's suddenly their 40th anniversary. Once again, Gilmore Girls has no idea what time is.
Touche. Fair enough.
Anyways, next up, not a wedding, but a wedding planning episode. Again, one of my favorites. I think it's sort of like a sleeper hit that I really enjoy personally.
Tell me why.
The Perfect Dress. I don't know. There's just something about it that's I don't know. Again, I love weddings. I love wedding planning. And so Lorelai and Suki having these conversations about what Lorelai's wedding is going to be like is super fun. And I also love the dress that Lorelai picks out. I feel like there's a bit of a fit issue in the front, just in terms of like how it cuts into her abdomen. But like other than that, I think the dress itself is really beautiful and is very much up my alley. And I actually have my own sort of like perfect dress story that comes out of this. You'll remember a couple months ago, there was this dress that I saw in a window. It's actually like a Norma Reed. You guys have Norma Reed, right? It's more of a prom dress and formal dress store, but they had one on a mannequin in the window and it was white and covered in sequins. And it was like off the shoulder ball gown dress. And so I went in one day, I was like eyeing this dress for so long. I go in, I don't see it anywhere on the racks. And so I talked to a sales associate and they're like, "That's the last one in the store." And I'm like, "What size is that?" And they're like, "It's a 12. And I'm like, "Oh, that might just work." So last dress in the store happens to be my size, also happens to be on sale. I put it on and I'm like this close to buying it. But then I didn't. I was like, I don't know. We haven't made any plans yet. This dress might be too big, too heavy, not the right vibe. It's just, it's not a good time for me to make this decision alone on a time crunch because it's the only one in the store. But I thought it was so fitting that I had my own like perfect dress moment. But it just kind of goes to show that like the perfect dress might be a bit of a myth, if that makes sense. Like this whole episode felt a bit fairy tale-ish that they could find the dress and then the invitations and then the church with the carousel and they were running a special and then she picked out his tux for him without consulting him and she picked a date without consulting him and it was just like, "Ooh, hey, we're done." but, and, as much as Luke doesn't really care about the wedding, like, maybe you should have run the date by him. I don't know. Like, it just seems like pretty basic common courtesy of like, hey, at least give me your thoughts on this. Even if you don't really care, I'd still like to include you and your opinion is valued. And Lorelai did none of that.
Yeah. This one for me is easy to kind of just watch and move on from, because I feel like it was just almost maybe even more exciting for Suki.
Mm.
Just to be like, I mean, think about the reaction she has when, she finds out from Kirk that Luke and her have kissed, the night that they have everybody for the test run. And she's like, you kissed Luke. You kissed, like, you kissed. And it's just like, she's such a good hype and like wing woman of a best friend. But I feel like maybe this just kind of is branching off of that, where she's like, let's just do this because I'm so excited for you. And Lorelai, it's not that it's not important to her, but maybe is more just like, okay.
Yeah. Lorelai definitely has some ambivalence when they're first sitting there at the table, and she's like, so give me your initial thoughts about your wedding. It should be legal.
Yep.
And I'm like, yes, I feel you on that. And yeah, she's like, what about the dress? Are you going to wear white? And Luke tries to have his say on that decision. And yet that's about all he seems to care about, is that Lorelai wears white because his mother wore white. And that's what you do, is you wear white to a wedding. I mean, hello. But, yeah, I have a white dress. It's fine. But also, I'm going to need you to do something for me real quick. I'm going to need you to give me your best Luke, who am I?
In what way?
Like, who am I?
That's gonna disturb someone who's sleeping right now, but okay, let's
roll the dice.
Who am I?
BFOTB. Yeah, I do love that. And like the minute I got engaged, I was like, Laura needs the BFOTB. Actually, before I got engaged, I was like, Laura needs BFOTB.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I quite like the episode in general, but it does feel again a little fairy tale-ish. But even Laura, like, it's baked into the premise. Lorelai recognizes it. She's like, it shouldn't be that easy, right? Because marriage isn't easy. So like, and she starts to have doubts when it comes to talking to Rory about it. She's like, it should have been harder than that, right? Is this a bad sign?
No, I don't think so. Yeah. But let's move on though, because we are starting to run a bit long, and we still have a few more weddings to get through. So,
indeed. Next up, we have Honor Huntsberger. This should be a quick one because there's not like too much to it. It's really just the bride and the bridesmaids getting ready beforehand. But obviously, this was I met Devin Servari wearing a white tracksuit and this t-shirt and my hair up in curlers when we went to FanFest last year. More about that at the end. But yeah, it's a fun episode to watch them all get ready together. And I love how she's like, you like my wedding sweats? I'm beginning to think Town and Country might not approve.
Yeah. And I also love how she has her own sort of like deer in the headlights come to Jesus moment, where she's like, why am I doing this? Like, what is this? Like, and she immediately has, her friend snap her out of it. But I think it's telling too that she's even just like, why does anybody do this to themselves? Like, what is it about this institution and this choice? Like, just asking the question of why.
Yeah. All of a sudden, the idea of marriage seems totally archaic and insane. Legally binding one woman with one man until they die? It's perverse. Why on earth do people do this? Why am I doing this? You love Josh, remember? Oh, yeah, Josh. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about with the whole, like, is the show family friendly and is it anti-marriage? This is one of those moments that makes me think it's like, it's not quite anti-marriage, but it does call out the whole, like, archaic tradition of it. And like, giving women away as property and a contract between a father and a husband that like completely cuts out the woman and all of that. Obviously, it seems like Honor and Josh maybe have a more modern relationship, although it's probably more like Emily and Richard than Lorelai and Luke. But this also reminds me that I pulled a quote from Red Light on the Wedding Night from Luke. I think I've mentioned this one a bunch of times in the past as well, where he's like, why don't you just elope and get it over with? A wedding is, a pointless bureaucratic ceremony. And Suki's like, you don't get a wedding over with. And I'm over here like, can I just get a wedding over with? Because the sooner I do that, the sooner we can start the immigration process. So yeah, maybe a wedding is something that you can just get over with. And Lorelai's open to eloping. There's a little bit of foreshadowing of her and Luke doing just that. So just a couple characters who were calling out the whole like, weddings are stupid kind of thing, written by someone who got married at the Greystone Mansion. Yep.
Kettle black, something like that.
Yeah, something. But that brings us to our next wedding, which is probably one of the weddings people think about most when they think of this show, and that's Lane and Zach's wedding, the double Buddhist Christian wedding.
Yeah. I mean, I am glad that Mrs. Kim especially allowed it to be of a like dual nature like that, where she was at least a little bit flexible and open-minded to say, like, I'm not going to bring the hammer down and have this just be an unbearable event for you that you not like, or Zach cannot even appreciate. She voiced what she wanted, for her daughter in terms of the religious component of the marriage and the ceremony. But she also allowed them to have a little bit of freedom to just like have fun with their day and not be so just diminishing of it. So I'm glad that she just gave the both of them breathing room, so to say.
Yeah, I think their relationship really shines in this episode. And it's a lovely situation. I love how Lorelai reworks Mrs. Kim's dress for her. It ends up beautiful. I love the sort of like contrasting gold lace mock neck that opens up and has like satin, like pink satin inside. I love the detachable skirt so that she can show off her legs later in the night once Mrs. Kim has left. She's like, I'm going to wear earplugs, the good ones, so I won't be able to hear what's going on out in the square to all hours of the night.
And I love how like Zach is here for it. The second that he rips it off, she's like, she has legs. Look at them.
Yeah. Also, I would like to point out that I think this is possibly the best Todd Lowe ever looked on the show. Like that blue suit on him, that shade of blue with his eyes and the way his hair was sitting that day, just something about it was like, yes. And the look on his face, he really nailed the sweet, abashed, excited, in love look as he waited for Lane to come down the aisle. Noticeable lack of Mr. Kim. Like they couldn't even bring in a stand-in dad for her wedding. What? Nope. Goodness gracious. I mean, it would have been really distracting because we would have never seen him before. We would have been like, oh my God, Lane's dad. But still, it's just kind of one of those like traditional things. And you'd think Mrs. Kim would be all about that. But yeah, I also love Lorelai and Christopher sort of sitting there and Lorelai reminiscing about Rory and Lane's lifelong friendship and how Lane was just always so there for Rory. And Chris points out that Rory could be next. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I love their wedding on the whole.
Yeah, good times. Another one that I would be happy to attend and would want to attend.
Drunk Lorelai giving a toast. Yeah, I'm there.
Would you like 7 shots of tequila, ma'am?
Yeah. I'll leave those to Lorelai because tequila and I don't get along anymore. But yeah. Again, Hep Alien. Rockin' weddings since 2006.
Yep.
Yeah. All right. That brings us to our last, or no, there's 2 more. Season 7 weddings. One is one we don't actually see, but that's obviously the elopement in Paris for Lorelai and Chris. Mm-hmm. And even though we don't see it, we obviously have Emily and Richard sticking in their noses when they get back and they're like, we want to throw you a wedding party. How do you feel about that? Like, how do you feel about the way that Emily was trying to insert herself there and plan a retroactive celebration for them?
I mean, I'm a little bit more okay with this one because, again, like, for all the problems that they've had, Emily, I think, like, there is genuine love and care. That's her daughter at the end of the day. So I think that even though some of her choices and event planning may seem a little bit too much over the top, like, I wish you wouldn't. I think it was just for Emily, again, coming from a place of just genuine happiness for her and Christopher. They've wanted these two to, be married and be together for so long. Now it has finally happened. I think Emily was just looking to acknowledge that. And this is Emily's love language. This is how she shows it, and it may not translate to Lorelai, to Rory, to, whomever's on the receiving end of it. But that's how Emily shows love and care and affection. So I think that's just what she was doing at this moment in time.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it's totally normal to have sort of a private wedding ceremony and then a big party after. I know cousins of mine have done that. That's probably what I'll end up doing in some manner. And I think it makes a lot of sense in a lot of ways. Obviously, Lorelai doesn't take it seriously. She doesn't want to do vows in front of people. She's like, we already got married. And that causes some tension with Christopher and with Emily. Like, Emily wants a wedding. Emily is just hell-bent on having a wedding, whether or not that's what Lorelai wants. And like, for me, like, if I did a party after my private ceremony, I don't know that I would do vows. Because I think those are, like, again, really kind of things that are meant to be a little more intimate between the couple. Like, then again, I read something in Liz Gilbert's book about vows made in private not really being legitimate in the eyes of others, in terms of, like, you need to do it publicly so that other people are there to hear it and hold you to them, and also live up to their end of the bargain in supporting you as a couple to do so. Still, my jury's out on my feelings on that, but yeah, she's very determined to kind of have Lorelai do this party her way, and Lorelai's interests and desires don't factor in maybe enough, and she's just a little too laissez-faire about it. Again, she sort of skulks off into the night to marry Christopher in Paris. Rory's not there. We'll talk about that more when we talk about Lorelai's relationship with Chris, because it's kind of a whole big separate topic to get into now. But it's almost like she doesn't want to be publicly married to him. She kind of hides him away in Stars Hollow a little bit, and doesn't want to do the whole big wedding thing. She doesn't want to invite a lot of people. She doesn't even put Lane on her wedding guest list. Like, she's not going to invite Lane and Zach. I mean, I know they're pregnant, but still, just something about the part, like, the idea of the party is fine, but the way that Emily was trying to force certain aspects that Lorelai wasn't comfortable with is just like, I know you're paying for this, but, like, maybe back off a little bit and just listen to your daughter for once, and take into account what she wants to celebrate her wedding, as opposed to what you think is, like, the socially acceptable list of things that must be done. I think that's a big part of it for her. I think she even says at one point, like, you don't want people to think you're hiding your marriage, do you? Like, it's the social validation and acceptance of this marriage as only being legitimate if they do it the right way. And I'm not really about that. I think you can do whatever you want, whatever's meaningful to you. And if their elopement was meaningful to them, that's one thing. Although I will say it probably wasn't legal, because I'm pretty sure you have to be resident in France for at least 7 days before you can get married. I think that's fairly, like, I wouldn't say standard across the EU, but, like, most places have some sort of resident rule. As someone who's been looking into like, how to marry people from or in other countries lately, the fact that it was all done in French, and they would have had to be resident in France for 7 days. Don't know how long they were there before that happened, but chances are good that maybe it wasn't super legit. And so it's just like, ooh, loophole, get out of jail free clause. But
Yep.
one last thing on their wedding that I just wanted to point out was the wedding gift for Richard and Emily, and Lorelai being like so excited to open it, and Emily saying, "Yes, you may open your present. For heaven's sakes, you're like a dolphin at feeding time." So good. And then the just like horrifying wolf girl print. I really want one. Like I need it. Somebody tell me where to get just like a good print of it so that I can cherish it forever because it's so funny. Yeah. Noted. Yeah. Wedding gift ideas, y'all. All right, that brings us to the last wedding of season 7, which is Mia and Howard. Any thoughts on their wedding?
Sweet, simple enough. I think it was nice that the girls made the trip, for it. They certainly didn't have to, but I think it just, speaks to their respect and love for Mia as someone who invested so significantly in their lives at a time of really heightened struggle. Mia probably saw Lorelai and Rory like, a daughter and a granddaughter. So it probably did mean a lot for them to be there. And having we don't get a lot of weddings on this show. Like, we have Emily and Richard's vow renewal, but this is a wedding for, two people who are, older now. They're not 22-year-olds getting married or 18-year-olds getting married. And, I'd like to think that, there's probably hopefully lasted, and went the distance. But I just thought it was sweet and it was simplistic, and I liked that it was written in and that, our girls were there for Mia.
Yeah. I agree with everything you just said. I loved just the simple sweetness of it. They got married in their own backyard or their own living room or whatever. And, Emily was a little judgmental of that, but I liked it. It's seemingly at least a second wedding for her because we know she has a son, presumably from a previous marriage, but maybe not because, in Lorelai's words, found a way around that.
Mm-hmm.
So could be their first weddings. But it's a fun episode. I think it, for me, is one of the highlights of season 7. A spotty season on the whole for some of our characters, but this one was sort of like an interesting escape from Stars Hollow and a reset button on some relationships, and it was nice. And I always like seeing Mia and Emily, although I preferred her with the original Mia actress. That, I don't know, there's something about that actress that just fit a little more for me, but yeah, I liked it. And last but not least, A Year in the Life. The Mac Daddy of all GG weddings. You know what is occurring to me is that, like, we don't actually see a lot of the weddings. Like, we see the build up to the wedding, but, like, we get next to zero of the ceremony or the vows.
Mm-hmm.
Including this one.
Yeah. And bless the first renewal, because this is something that we might not have ever seen or gotten, had that not existed. First, I mean, I'll just say this, like, Kirk, my man, like,
yeah,
brava. Like, I just,
but how did he do that? I mean, I know Stars Hollow is a magical, mystical place, but, like, where did he get all that stuff? Why was it lit up at night when nobody was supposed to be there? Like, it makes no sense that he could accomplish all of that in, like, a couple of hours. I think, didn't he say something about, like, 2 hours later it was all different? I'm like, there's no way, unless you had an entire, like, staff of people.
It's Stars Hollow, so you know what? Maybe he did.
Maybe he did.
He probably got Taylor to, like, look the other way on violating a bunch of town ordinances, and he's just like, listen, bring everybody together. This is not me misplacing Easter eggs. This is actually, like, a really good cause right now. Let's just decorate the town square. But it was beautiful.
Yeah,
like absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, the set designers and dressers did a fantastic job. It just, and it could have been so easily fixed in exposition. And so it's like, it's not a problem with the event itself. It's more just like, why did you even set it up that way if it wasn't something that was, like, logical or feasible? But again, it's just, they do what they want. time be damned. They like it's like Stars Hollow exists in a black hole of time unto itself. But and I mean, I have other gripes with the wedding, and I know other people do too. Like, I'm not the only one who's clocked this, but like, you had one scene with Melissa McCarthy. You had limited time with Milo Ventimiglia. Why weren't they at the wedding? Why was Lane dragged out of bed, but Jess not dragged out of bed? Like,
yeah. Yeah, there's really no explanation for it. Like,
yeah.
If they're in town, and they are, where are they at?
Yeah. The other thing that gets me is like, as Luke is exiting the gazebo, he's got his arm around Rory, not Lorelai. Like, Lorelai stays back to just sort of like take it all in again. And I'm like, what? Like, why are you not like holding hands with your bride? Why are you walking away with Rory so that we can have a shot on Lorelai? Like, there's just something off about that. Mm-hmm. It's strange. And the other thing is like, what the hell time is this that it's so late that nobody else is out and about, but preteen ballerinas are rehearsing? Like, what is happening in this scene? It makes no sense, and it didn't have to be like this.
It's Under the Dome on crack.
I know. I wish we had seen the Steely Dan flash mob. That would have made me happy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But I do like Luke and Lorelai being like, you know what? Let's go off and just like get the nerve-wracking ceremony bit out of the way, and then when we do it again tomorrow, we won't be so nervous, so we can just sit back and enjoy it. Which, again, How I Met Your Mother, Marshall and Lily do pretty much the same thing, because a bunch of stuff goes wrong at their wedding, and they're like, let's just take a moment with just our friends, and then when we go back in there and we do the regular wedding, we'll have the memories from this one where everything was perfect. And so I get that. I'm here for that. But yeah, Michelle was there and Suki wasn't, and Lane was there but Jess wasn't. It makes no sense. Just where did he find all of those hats in Stars Hollow on short notice? Like, do they have an expert milliner just right there in town?
Maybe.
Why is there a dance floor legitimately in the middle of the street? I don't know. But I will say, I wouldn't mind if Reverend Skinner married me. Jim Jansen, if you're watching, and I know you are your services available? He was also on an episode of Deep Space Nine, and Dan is a big Star Trek fan, so like I'm sure Dan would be on board with that. But yeah.
I mean, I thought that we had. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you go ahead, because this is a whole other point.
I thought that we had agreed that Adam Sandler was gonna take on that responsibility, but it's okay. Reverend Skinner's just good second choice.
Yeah, we'll have to see who's available. Like, it's all politics. But by the time they're drinking champagne on the steps of the gazebo, the sun is up again. What the hell time is it? Why did they stay up the entire night before the wedding? Rory chooses the morning of her mom's wedding day to tell her she's pregnant. Like, what? Even Rachel Green tried to hide her pregnancy from Monica during Monica's wedding. Like,
but it's all about me.
Common courtesy, folks. Yeah, it's just a whole thing. Emily is not there. I mean, I get it that she'd have to leave first thing in the morning from Nantucket to get there in time for the wedding, but it's a whole thing. She's often left out of Lorelai's life, and she's constantly mad about that. And now suddenly they're on much better terms, and she's still left out of this wedding. It just feels like an ouchie.
A little bit.
But
yeah. Any final thoughts on the epitome of the Gigi show weddings before we close this one down?
Well, I have like one overarching thing that I noticed. Kirk is present at almost every wedding and has some sort of role in almost every wedding on the show. He is the swan delivery guy in Kill Me Now. He is he's a guest at Suki's wedding. He is planned to be the photographer at Lorelai and Max's wedding. He is the DJ at Liz and TJ's wedding. He is the like in charge of the bartenders at Lane's wedding, the yummy bartenders. He does the design, the wedding planning, if you will, for Lorelai's wedding in the town square. The only one he's not at is the vow renewal.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah. Well, Kirk of all trades.
Kirk of all trades, man.
Gotta afford the Twickham house somehow.
I have $248,000. Oh yeah, I feel like I still have more to say on weddings and stuff. Again, how many pages was 109 pages this time, crammed into just an hour 50, which is already way too long. So let's wrap this up.
Yep. What's coming up for TGW, but also in the general GG universe that we should talk about?
Next up on my docket will be an episode on the one, the only Lorelai Gilmore. That'll be dropping on Friday the 15th. Lauren Graham, Queen's birthday, is March 16th. So we're doing it in honor of her. We're probably going to dig on Lorelai a little bit, but you will never hear a bad word come out of our mouth about Lauren Graham. So there's that. Yeah. And more generally in the GG sphere, tickets to FanFest are available. So if you haven't already gotten on that train, make sure that you get your tickets to the Firelight event. There's a link in our description box down below to go to the event page, get yourself a ticket. There will be cast and crew there. Check for up-to-date cast announcements. Keep checking back regularly. Go to the Facebook group. People will help you plan and make packing lists and all that kind of stuff. The community is super supportive. Come out and meet us. We're going to be there in Guilford, Connecticut, October 18th to 20th. So make sure that you stop by because like the GG fandom is truly one of a kind and it's an experience like no other. We've been to cons and this is like far and away better. And
yeah. If you have any questions about it, please feel free to shoot us an email and ask, drop a comment on this or any one of our videos. We're happy to talk to you more about it and just encourage you to come and explain why it is just truly one of the most magical weekends for any GG fan. Don't sleep on it because I have a feeling that this event will sell out. There are only going to be a limited number of tickets available. So, don't miss out on this opportunity when it is really something that is just above and beyond.
Yeah, like even in the first week, they were selling like hotcakes and hundreds of people already got their tickets. So like there might be a resale market. So if you happen to miss out, don't lose hope. Keep it in your mind and in your heart and you might still get to go. But yeah, keep an eye on that. Make sure in general that you do the UTB things on the way out. If you haven't already, hit the like button, hit the subscribe. We're here every Friday, theoretically. Check the description box below for links to our social media, our Instagram, our email, our friend Jess, her beautiful merch, the FanFast Society, all the things we love. Make sure you follow us, stay tuned, come back next Friday. We've got more to say all the time about this show. So like keep coming back week after week. We love having you here.
Yep. And as always, just, drop us a comment if you have thoughts. We'd love to hear what you have to say as well on top of our, general commentary on anything. That's what we do this for. So we'd love to hear your thoughts too. Please share them with us. And, just we're always grateful for any support that we receive. And we really just want to make that known.
Exactly.
Other than that, enjoy your weekend and we will see you next Friday night for dinner.
Bye.
Ciao.
I now pronounce the stream over.